Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, Speak Crime to Me. My name is Elena. On today's episode, we are going to do a quick recap of day 7 of the Alec Murdaugh trial. Today was a very strange day in court, so let's dive in. So I'm just going to quickly go through how the day started and ended and catch you all up. As mentioned yesterday, the judge started hearing arguments from the defense and the prosecution about why these financial witnesses should be included in this case and their testimony should be heard in front of the jury. The judge begins the morning off by saying the reason why he allowed the state to ask the final witness yesterday about the financial issues, Paul's friend, last name Loving, can't remember his first name, was because Murdaugh's defense team opened the door by turning the previous witness, Rogan Gibson, into a character witness by asking Rogan Gibson if he could think of any reason why Alex would kill Maggie and Paul. Gibson said he couldn't think of any. Newman says that allowed the state to ask the next witness if the financial crimes could have provided the motive. Now the judge explains why he overruled Murdaugh's objection when his defense team said totally inappropriate, end quote, totally inappropriate is not a legal basis for an objection, the judge says. It's not an objection at all, he said. The judge basically says the test is whether the criminality is logically related to the crime in question. The defense basically argues that they disagrees that they opened the door for the financial crimes to be asked. Then that's when the judge says that he plans to have a separate hearing outside the jury's presence to discuss the financial evidence, if any, will be omitted into evidence and heard in front of the jury. They start quickly with the prosecution starts today with a very quick witness. She is a Snapchat expert. Her name is Heidi Galore of Snap Corp. Her job is to respond to law enforcement issues for Snapchat, including responding to subpoenas and appearing in trials to verify evidence from Snapchat. It was a very quick interview. She basically testifies that the Snapchat video of Paul's phone was taken on June 7th at 7:39 p.m. Paul sent it to his friends at 7:56. This is a separate video from the dog video that was taken at 8:44. That 7:39 video was of Paul and Alec looking at trees and things on their property. Basically is asking that the metadata shows the video was actually recorded at 7:38 and establishes that SLED didn't ask Snapchat for a list of Paul's friends, nor did they request Paul's geographic location from Snapchat. Then she steps down. And the judge dismisses the jury, and we start with some of these financial testimony. CFO of Alec Murdaugh's law firm, her name is Janine Sickinger. It is a very long testimony. She talks a lot about the financials, so I'll just kind of go through some of the stuff that stood out to me. Their legal fees went into a shared pot that was split up at the end of the year and bonuses based on the ratio of fees each brought in. She notes, partners got most of their pay in the last week of the year in form of bonuses. Partners got a huge lump sum and had to make that last over the next year until the next bonus, in addition to their $125 base salary. She notes that all the lawyers at PMPED were required to send all their fees to the law firm. They could not be paid directly. She notes that she's known Alec Murdaugh for 40 years and that he made good money, sometimes getting 7-figure payouts when bonuses went out at the end of the year. She testifies she had a conversation with Alec Murdaugh in late May 2021, before the murders, when she saw he was trying to structure legal fees he had received from a case. Murdaugh told her he was trying to put some money in Maggie's name to shield it from the 2019 boat crash lawsuit. She was just trying to figure out how the law firm was going to account for that money for their books, because Alec Murdaugh had already done this. And in early June, she and the law firm starts pestering Alec Murdaugh about the missing $792,000 missing in legal fees from a case that Murdaugh worked with Bamberg attorney Chris Wilson. The firm got the expense check from the case, but not the attorney fees. And she noted that was odd. She states that she went into Alec Murdaugh's office on June 7th, the day of the murders, and demanded to see proof he or Chris Wilson still had the $792,000 that it was accessible, as Alex had claimed. She said she had no reason to believe that Alex had received that money directly. Midway through that conversation, Alex received a phone call that his dad received a terminal diagnosis at the hospital. That changed the mood of the conversation, and they quit talking about business, and she became more of a friend at that moment. Then she says that all the partners at PMPED met privately on September 3rd and reviewed the documentation. It looked like Alex had stolen. His brother, Randy, a law partner, agreed. They confronted Alex about it. He confessed, and they made him resign. At this point, the law firm PMPED starts digging around and found some strange payments to Palmetto State Bank. Funds were directed to the bank as if they were going to be held for a beneficiary, but then those checks were converted to Alex's personal use. Then she says Alex, in one case, reduced his normal 30 to 40% client fee, so more money would go to the client, but then he stole that money from his client via the fake forge account. So he was actually cutting the amount that would go to the law firm and boosting what he could steal himself. She also testifies that the law firm PMPED found a series of 2011 through 2012 thefts Alex Murdaugh perpetrated from the Badger family after their mother, Donna Badger, was killed in a crash with a UPS driver. The recovery was $3.1 million. Murdaugh took $1.2 million in legal fees and then stole more than $1.3 more. The prosecution shows her a bunch of financial documents that they go through, and she testifies that the law firm had to find all these clients that he stole from, and they had to pay that money back. This was also a very strange place for the CFO to be in, because the ex-Palmetto State Bank CEO, Russell Lafayette, is Salinger's brother-in-law, married to her husband's sister. She testified in his November federal trial, after which Lafayette was convicted of 6 charges to this saga. Then the defense goes up and basically gets her to get Salinger to say that they stopped this investigation the day of June 7th after Alec Murdaugh received that phone call about his father. Then the defense asks if this forged scheme was documented in their financial records dating back to 2015. She says they were. They didn't catch their attention before that. The defense says the information has been at your fingertips. 2015, it was there. 16, it was there. 17, it was there. And she says that's right. That's basically how this testimony, this financial testimony of the CFO Salinger went. She stepped down and we move on. All right, and then the prosecution and the defense keep on going back and forth about this financial evidence, and the defense says if they bring all of this financial evidence to the trial, it's going to last like for 2 weeks. The defense is like, the intent is not to call 100 white-collar witnesses. It's to explain what was going on in Alec Murdaugh's life coming up and ahead on to June 7th. So the judge urges both sides to try to come to an agreement about what to do with this financial evidence, and if not, then the judge will make the call. The next witness for the prosecution is Dylan Hightower. He's an investigator of the 4th Circuit Federal District. He's the one who downloaded the contents of Alec Murdaugh's phone a few days after the murders. He was at the Moselle property the day after the murders. He took drone footage of the property. He says there were some pine trees between the main house and the dog kennels, but they were short, about 6 to 8 feet tall. But he testifies back in June 2021, he did get a clear channel, a clear view between the kennels and the residence. Basically, the prosecution is trying to establish here that Murdaugh should have been able to see the kennels before he left Moselle the night after 9 p.m. Then he testifies about using Find My Phone to find Maggie's iPhone. He's the one who was there when they found it. He took photos of it, but he didn't touch it himself. He testifies about reviewing Alec Murdaugh's call records from Verizon and comparing them with the data from his cell phone. On Murdaugh's cell phone, he found 2 calls on the date of the slayings. On the Verizon record, there were 73 more calls. They had been deleted. So he was comparing the Verizon bill or record to Alec Murdaugh's actual phone, and they didn't match up. The Verizon bill had 73 more calls. Then the defense starts cross-examining this witness. And the main defense lawyer that everyone had talked about, that Alec Murdaugh had secured, that is supposed to be this amazing lawyer. I will tell you guys, I'm not even going to explain how this cross-examining went, because I was like, this guy is not good. But I'm not an attorney, so this is just me watching and listening. I was not impressed, or I haven't even been impressed, but today I was definitely not impressed. All right, and then the prosecution calls another witness, a SLED investigator. Her name is Katie McAllister. She basically testified that she searched the Moselle property on the next day after the murders. She had a search warrant but didn't execute it. She didn't want to have to displace the 25 people who had gathered at the house. She says she searched every room of the Moselle property plus bathrooms, tubs, and attics. And then the defense cross-examined hers, basically gets her to say that she found no evidence of blood or tissue in the showers or tubs, nor any clothing anywhere in the house with blood or tissue. Nothing to suggest that anyone had cleaned off after, basically suggesting that no one cleaned off after committing the violent crime. Then the judge dismisses the jury until 11:30 tomorrow and continue to hear testimony from these financial witnesses. The next witness in this financial case, or the second financial witness, is Michael Gunn of Forge Consulting, the Atlanta-based firm that Alec Murdaugh impersonated with a fee. Testifies that a PMPED attorney, Lee Cope, called him in September 2021 with a list of clients and asked if Forge Consulting had any files to back them up. Forge Consulting did not. Gunn said he called Cope back the next day with another list. Forge hadn't done work for those clients either. Gunn asked Cope if Forge Consulting banked with Bank of America. Gunn told them that they used to, but it hadn't been in 3 or 4 years. Gunn said he didn't ask why Cope was asking these questions, but he found out on Tuesday after Labor Day 2021. Cope then told Gunn that they discovered that Alec Murdaugh was using a bank account labeled Forge to process checks and steal money from clients. And then they ask, was this account associated with Forge Consulting? And Gunn says absolutely not. Then the prosecution starts showing this gentleman a series of exhibits, financial statements, transactions involving Murdaugh's fake Forge account, and asks him, is this legit? And the gentleman says no. He also testifies that the way Forge Consulting does business, you would never make a check payable to them. And the defense just basically asked this gentleman, Forge Consulting sells life insurance, and asks if Alec Murdaugh had purchased life insurance policies on Maggie or Paul. And Gunn says no. Financial witness is Chris Wilson. He is with a law firm, Bamberg, and this is the most emotional and saddest testimony we have seen yet in this case so far. This witness is a longtime friend of Alec Murdaugh's, and he was the one that partnered, or he asked Alec Murdaugh to partner with him on the $792,000 share of legal fees that went missing, and started raising the alarm bells to the PMPED attorneys. So he basically starts off saying that he's known Alec Murdaugh since high school. They went to law school together at USC and lived together part of that time. He was one of his best friends. Then the prosecution asks him, are they still good friends now? And Mr. Waters says, I don't know how I feel now. Then he starts testifying about that case I just mentioned against Mack Trucks. They won 2 verdicts worth $5.5 million combined. Murdaugh's share of the legal fees was $792,000, but before Wilson cut the check to a PMPED, as usual, Murdaugh came to him to ask him if he could send the check to Murdaugh directly, saying he was going to use the money to purchase equity and had already cleared it with his law firm. Wilson testified he did as Murdaugh asked. Then the prosecution asked, did this raise alarm bells? And Mr. Wilson says no, because he trusted his friend, and he said very much. As far as he was aware, that Murdaugh had given the $792,000 in legal fees directly to the firm in March 2021 and was putting them into annuities. Mid-July 2021, he testifies that Murdaugh contacted him and said that he was not able to structure the fees the way he thought he was able to. He had messed that up. Murdaugh says that he needed to have them pay. Murdaugh said he needed to pay them back to Wilson's trust account, and then Wilson could pay them to PMPED. But Murdaugh only came up with $600,000. He was short $192,000. Murdaugh explained some of the money had gotten into annuity and he couldn't get it back. And then Wilson testifies that he, from his personal bank account, covered the $192,000 that Murdaugh was short, and Murdaugh pledged to pay him back. Then he testifies that he sees Paul Murdaugh at the SC Association of Justices annual conference on the first weekend of August 2021 and asked him about the money. Murdaugh said he was working on getting the money. He said that he was getting the money soon from his father's estate, but Maggie's estate was still tied up. He said he was sensitive to Murdaugh's emotional being because of the recent tragedies, and he didn't push him. On August 17th, 2021, Wilson had Murdaugh sign a promissory note pledging to repay the $192,000 to Wilson within 60 days. He said that he did this because he had a feeling that Alec Murdaugh might try to kill himself, and if he didn't have it in writing, then he was never going to get that money back. Then on September 3rd, 2021, pimp attorney Lee Cope called Wilson and told him that Murdaugh had been stealing money from his clients and the firm. Wilson said he called Murdaugh and called him until he finally got in touch with him. He met with Murdaugh on the front porch of Murdaugh's parents' house in Alameda. And then this is when Wilson starts breaking down on the stand and crying, and your heart just breaks for him. He said he was so mad. I had loved this guy for so long, and I probably still love him a little bit, but I was so mad. Still crying on the stand, and they asked him afterward. He didn't, did you know or see these things coming? He said Murdaugh confessed and told him that he had been stealing money and that he had a drug addiction and that he had Murdaugh said he had shit me up and had shit a lot of people up. Later that day, Wilson got a call from Lee Cope again saying that Murdaugh had been shot in the head. Wilson said he thought, what in the devil is going on? And Wilson thought, I thought he had tried to kill himself. He testifies that he has not spoken to Murdaugh since that day, that Murdaugh had texted him and even sent him a letter. One of the texts read in court, so sorry for the havoc I created. I'd do anything to make it right. He also says the letter that was sent, Mr. Wilson said he gave it to his attorneys. It turned it over to his attorney, so he doesn't know what that said. The defense then argues that the jury should hear witnesses like Wilson, quoting, for the jury to understand the reality of what he was facing, they have to understand the extent of what was really going to be exposed. The defense has no questions for Mr. Wilson, and he steps off the stand. The defense then argues in front of the judge that the Labor Day roadside shooting was part of a pattern with Murdaugh, trying to make himself a victim to cover up his crimes. Quote, when the hounds are at the door for Alex Murdaugh, violence happens. Then the defense starts arguing that this is all theory, there's no facts, their theory is the best way out is for him to murder his wife and son and put himself in the middle of a murder investigation. The defense says they've got a whole lot more evidence about financial misconduct than they do about the murder. That's what this is all about. Then the judge says that he wants to hear from the attorney for Mallory Beach, for Mallory Beach's family. Remember, Mallory Beach is the girl that died in that boating accident in 2019 that Paul was accused of. And then after he hears this testimony, he will hear arguments from both sides. Then he will make his final ruling. The prosecution says this attorney for Mallory Beach's family is not available to testify until Monday morning. The defense then says they filed a motion arguing Mark Tinsley should not be allowed to testify. The judge says that he won't take up any arguments about Tinsley until he is available to testify. So that is how court ended today. It will start back up tomorrow at 9:30, probably with some more financial stuff, and then the jury will return at 11:30 to hear some more testimony. So that is the recap for today. Again, another wild ride. Thank you all again for joining me here on Speak Crime to Me. I will be back tomorrow.